I used to think silence was empty. Now I know it can watch you. It started 3 nights before Christmas, the kind of cold that doesn't just sit in the air, but leans against the walls. The kind that makes your house creak in ways that don't match the temperature. I was alone. Not metaphorically, literally. No roommates, no neighbors close enough to matter. Just me in a single-floor house at the edge of a half-developed suburb that never filled in the way it was supposed to. The Christmas tree was already up. That's important. I didn't put it up out of joy. I put it up because the house felt wrong without it. Empty rooms echo differently in December. The tree was artificial, cheap, pre-lit. White LEDs. No ornaments except a few matte black ones I bought as a joke years ago. I remember thinking they looked like eyes if you stared too long. That first night I heard footsteps in the snow outside at 2:17 a.m. I know the time because my phone lit up when I instinctively reached for it, and I remember being annoyed that the battery percentage dropped for no reason. The steps weren't rushed. They weren't hesitant. They were slow, deliberate, and heavy enough that I could hear the crunch even through the walls. I didn't look outside. That's another thing that matters, because when I finally did, nights later, I understood why the instinct had been so strong. Whatever it was out there didn't like being seen. Not yet. The second night, the footprints were closer. They circled the house. Not randomly, not like an animal. They followed the perimeter, pausing at each window, lingering longest at the living room, where the tree stood. I remember crouching below the sill, heart pounding, watching shadows stretch across the curtains. Something tall passed in front of the glass, too tall. The shadow bent where no human joint should bend. Still, no knocking, no scratching, just presence. On the third night, the smell started. Burnt hair, old iron, damp wool. It seeped in through the vents, thick and metallic, like the air itself had rusted. I gagged and turned off the heating, but the smell didn't fade. It waited. The house felt occupied in a way that had nothing to do with sound, like when someone stands behind you and doesn't breathe. That was the night the bells rang, not jingle bells. Heavy ones, dull, irregular, leather-strapped metal clashing softly like they were being carried rather than shaken. They moved from the back of the house toward the front door. Slow, patient. I remember thinking, Krampus. Not as a joke. Not as folklore. As a realization. I grew up in Germany. The stories were always there, tucked between Christmas markets and cardboard cutouts of smiling saints. Krampus takes the bad children. Krampus punishes. Krampus carries chains and bells and switches. But the stories never mentioned this feeling. They never mentioned the certainty. I backed away from the door. My phone had no signal. The lights flickered, not off, not on, just dimmer, like they were afraid. The bells stopped directly outside the door. Something leaned in. The wood creaked inward, not from force, but from weight. Whatever stood there was resting against it, listening. I could hear its breath now, wet, uneven, too slow. Then it spoke, not words. A sound like someone trying to remember how a throat works. I didn't scream. I didn't pray. I stood there, frozen, staring at the deadbolt, thinking about how thin the door suddenly seemed. And then it moved, not away, inside, not through the door, not breaking it. The sound came from the hallway behind me, bells chiming softly with each step, leather brushing against drywall. I turned slowly, every instinct screaming not to, and saw it standing between me and the living room. Krampus was not red. Its skin was black, not shadow, material. Matte, light-eating, stretched tight over a frame that was wrong in every proportion. Limbs too long, joints bending backward, fingers like bundled wire, ending in cracked, yellowed nails. Its head was crowned with horns that scraped the ceiling, asymmetrical and chipped like they'd been worn down by time, not battle. Its eyes were empty, not glowing, not red, just holes. Its tongue slid out slowly, too long to belong to any mammal, dragging across its chin and leaving a trail of saliva that smoked when it hit the floor. It smelled like the outside had followed it in. It tilted its head, and then it looked past me. At the Christmas tree, the lights flickered faster now, buzzing like insects trapped in glass. The ornaments trembled. One fell and shattered, the sound deafening in the quiet. Krampus stepped closer. Every bell rang once. I don't remember running. I remember being on the floor, crawling, my hand slipping on something wet that hadn't been there before. I remember the sound of wood splintering, not violently, but effortlessly, as it brushed past furniture that no longer mattered. I made it to the bathroom and slammed the door, locking it, knowing how stupid that was. The bells stopped outside. Then the scratching began, not on the door, on the walls, like it was testing the house. I sat there for hours, knees to my chest, listening to it move through my home, rearranging things I couldn't see. At some point it laughed, quietly, like a memory of laughter. When morning came, the house was empty. The door was still locked. The windows intact. But the Christmas tree was gone. Not knocked over. Not broken. Gone. So were my childhood photos, my old school reports, the boxes in the attic I hadn't opened in years, everything that proved who I used to be, every record of innocence, failure, weakness, was missing. On the wall above where the tree had stood, something had been scratched into the paint. Not words. Tallies. I moved out the same day. I don't decorate anymore. And every December, when the air gets too still and the nights feel crowded, I hear bells in places where snow doesn't fall. Krampus does not knock. He waits until you let yourself be remembered. I didn't move out far enough. That's what I realized first. Distance helps with normal things. Noise, people, memories. It does nothing against something that already knows your outline. I went 3 towns over, into a newer apartment complex where the walls were thin but the rules were clear. Neighbors above, neighbors below, cameras in the hallways, Motion lights, a place where nothing old was supposed to survive. For 11 months, nothing happened. That's the second mistake people make. They think silence means forgiveness. December came back quietly. No snow at first, just that same pressure in the air, like the atmosphere had been compressed a little too tightly. I avoided decorations, no lights, no tree. I didn't even acknowledge the season. I kept the blinds closed and the TV on at night, not watching, just filling space. On December 3rd, I found a bell in my kitchen sink. It was heavy, dull metal, leather strap still attached, cracked and dark with age. It smelled faintly of iron and smoke even after I washed my hands. I checked the door cam. Nothing. No alerts. No motion events. According to the system, no one had entered or exited my apartment since the night before. I threw the bell away. That night, my dreams changed. I wasn't being chased. I wasn't afraid in the dreams. Not directly. I was smaller, shorter. My hands were too small to grip things properly. My voice didn't come out right when I tried to speak. In the dream, I was standing in my old living room, staring at the place where the tree had once been. And I knew, without being told, that I was being evaluated, not judged, measured. I woke up every time to the same sound. Leather shifting, somewhere just outside awareness. On December 6th, my phone gallery changed. Photos I didn't remember taking appeared overnight. Blurry, tilted, always indoors, always framed poorly, like whoever took them didn't understand composition or distance. One showed my hallway from ceiling height. Another showed me asleep on the couch, mouth open, eyes rolled slightly back. The timestamps were wrong. Years old, dated before I had even moved into the building. I deleted them. They came back. Not copies. New angles. On December 9th, the neighbors started decorating. I tried not to watch. I failed. Lights crept across balconies and windows, blinking in patterns that felt intentional even when they weren't. I could hear muffled laughter through the walls. Music. Life. It made the apartment feel thinner, like the barrier between inside and outside had lost structural integrity. That night, the bells rang again. Not loud, not close. Somewhere in the building. Moving. The security cameras glitched for exactly 12 minutes. Every feed froze on a single frame. Empty hallways, sterile stairwells, doors closed. When the system came back online, the logs showed movement on every floor at once. No visual confirmation, just presence. I didn't sleep. On December 12th, a child went missing from the complex next door. They didn't say the name on the news at first, just age, description, red jacket, last seen near the parking garage. I watched the report with the volume low, heart pounding for reasons I didn't want to examine. The camera panned across the area where the snow had finally started to settle. There were footprints, too deep, too far apart. The next morning there was scratching on my door. Not knocking. Slow, vertical drags, like something was counting the height of the frame. I stood on the other side, hand hovering inches from the handle. every instinct telling me that if I opened it, even a crack, I wouldn't be deciding anything anymore. The scratching stopped. A moment passed. Then something slid under the door. A photograph. It was old, faded, creased at the corners. A school picture. Me, not recently, not even as a teenager, younger, smiling the wrong way, like I hadn't learned how to hide yet. On the back, written in uneven pressed strokes, was a single line. Still fits. I burned the photo in the sink. The smoke set off the alarm. The sprinklers didn't activate. The building system logged it as a false positive. On December 15th, the bells stopped moving. They stayed right outside my door. I could hear the leather shift when the air conditioning kicked on. I could hear breathing, not labored, not aggressive, just patient, like it had all the time in the world and was curious how long I'd pretend not to notice. That's when I understood the rule. Krampus doesn't punish bad children. He collects what never finished growing. The parts of you that stayed small, afraid, untouched by the lie that you're whole now. He doesn't need trees or traditions. Those are just markers, invitations. At 3:04 a.m., the lights went out. Not just mine. The entire building. Emergency lights flickered on in the hall, bathing everything in sickly red. The camera feed on my phone showed the hallway outside my door. Something was standing there. It filled the frame vertically, hunched to fit. Black skin absorbing the light, horns scraping the ceiling tiles. Its head tilted toward my door, listening, not for sound, but for hesitation. The bells rang once. Then the door handle turned. Not violently, carefully, like it didn't want to break what it was about to take. I'm writing this from a place that doesn't decorate, doesn't celebrate, doesn't acknowledge December at all. It hasn't found me again, yet. But sometimes when I catch my reflection in dark glass, I swear I look shorter. And somewhere, far below the sound of traffic and life, I hear bells that no one else reacts to. They're not coming closer. They're waiting for me to stop growing. There is a point where hiding stops being survival and becomes permission. I crossed that point without realizing it. The place I'm in now doesn't have an address that works properly. Mail gets lost. GPS drifts. Delivery drivers call, confused, insisting the building isn't where it's supposed to be. That felt like safety at first. A place slightly misaligned with the rest of the world. But misalignment is where things wait. I stopped sleeping in long stretches. When I did sleep, I woke up smaller. Not physically at first, but internally. Thoughts simplifying, fears sharpening. The adult justifications I used to keep myself steady began to dissolve. I caught myself sitting on the floor instead of the couch, eating with my hands without noticing, holding objects too close to my chest. Regression isn't dramatic, it's quiet. On December 18th, I lost time. 4 hours gone. No memory, no dream. I came back sitting in the hallway with my back against the wall, knees pulled up, fingernails cracked and bleeding like I'd been digging into the paint. In front of me was a line scratched into the floor. Not deep, not violent. Measured. My height. Child height. I scrubbed at it until my hands went numb. The mark stayed. That night the bells rang inside the apartment. Not moving, not approaching, just present. I followed the sound against my own judgment. Through the dark, into the room I avoided most, the spare room I never unpacked. The door was open. It hadn't been before. I know that because I always keep it closed. It feels watched otherwise. Inside, the room was wrong. Smaller than it should have been. The walls closer together, the ceiling lower, the air warmer, thicker, smelling faintly of wool and smoke and something sweet underneath, like old candy melted into carpet. In the center of the room stood the sack, not burlap. Leather, stitched from different textures, different shades, like it had been repaired over and over across centuries. It breathed, not visibly, but audibly, soft expansions and contractions like lungs learning a new rhythm. I didn't scream. I understood. Krampus doesn't take you from the outside. He waits until the part of you that never grew tall enough steps forward on its own. Behind me, the bells rang again. When I turned, he was there. Closer than ever before. Close enough that I could see the cracks in his skin, the way it pulled apart slightly at the joints like it had dried too fast. Close enough to see that the empty eye sockets weren't empty at all. They were deep, and something looked back from inside them. Not hunger, recognition. He knelt. The floor groaned under his weight. His horns scraped the ceiling, shedding dust. He reached out, not with claws, but with 2 fingers, long, careful, almost gentle. He stopped inches from my face. Waiting, I felt it then. The pull. Not physical. Psychological. The sudden urge to confess things I'd buried under years of adulthood. The shame. The fear. The loneliness that never aged. The moments where I wanted someone else to decide for me. I was tired enough to almost step forward. That's when the emergency alert went off. Not on my phone, on everything. TV, radio, building intercom. All at once. A harsh tone, distorted, dragging too long. Like the system itself was struggling to stay coherent. The voice that followed wasn't right. Too slow, too flat, spaced incorrectly, like it had been stitched together. This is an emergency broadcast. Remain indoors. Do not acknowledge auditory stimuli resembling bells. Do not respond to knocking. Do not. The voice glitched, repeated. Do not present yourself. Krampus recoiled. Just slightly. Enough for me to understand the final rule. He can't take what refuses to remember itself as small. I stood up. It hurt. My bones ached like they were being forced into the wrong shape. My head swam. The room protested, the walls shuddering as if rejecting my size. The sack behind me hissed, leather tightening. Krampus stood too. For the first time, his patience cracked. The bells rang violently now. The sound was everywhere, overlapping, collapsing in on itself. He lunged, not fast, not slow, inevitable. I ran, not away, through the room, through the sensation of hands grabbing at parts of me that wanted to stay behind. I slammed the door and locked it, hearing something heavy collide with it from the other side. The door bowed inward, wood screaming, then silence. Total. I didn't move for hours. When I finally opened the door, the room was normal again. Empty, no sack, no smell. Just dust and an indentation in the carpet where something heavy had once rested. On the wall, at adult eye level, a final marking had been scratched. A bell, crossed out. It's December 24th now. The world outside is loud with celebration. Lights, music, children laughing. I don't react to it the way I used to. Something in me feels sealed, reinforced, like a door welded shut. But sometimes, late at night when the city goes quiet, I hear bells very far away. Not approaching, moving past, looking for someone else who hasn't finished growing. Krampus does not take you. He waits for you to hand yourself over. And he always has another sack. I thought refusing him meant closure. That was naive. What I didn't understand is that survival doesn't reset the system. It just flags you as processed, not taken, not spared, logged. January came, and with it, the illusion of normality. The bells faded from my dreams. My posture corrected itself. I stopped catching myself sitting on the floor. I slept through the night again, most nights. I told myself the worst was over. That's when the artifacts started appearing. Small things at first, out of context. A single muddy footprint in the stairwell of my building, too elongated to belong to anyone who lived there. A leather strap wedged behind a radiator at work, not attached to anything, just waiting. I stopped reporting them. I'd already learned that systems don't like things that don't fit their categories. On January 14th, I received an email from an address made entirely of numbers. No subject line, no body text, just an attachment, a PDF titled December Inventory Incomplete. I opened it. I shouldn't have. The document was formatted like a municipal report. Clean, bureaucratic, tables and checkboxes. Page after page of items listed under headings like recovered, unclaimed, deferred. Most entries were redacted. Some weren't. I saw names, not full names, first names only, ages, heights, always heights. Some entries were marked collected, others unfit. A few, very few, were labeled escaped structural damage. My name was there, no age, 2 heights listed, 1 crossed out. At the bottom of the document, a note. Subject retains awareness, monitor. After that, the recording started. Not professionally, not deliberately. My phone would activate on its own. Voice recorder, camera, sometimes both. I'd find files later I didn't remember creating. Static-filled audio of empty rooms, video clips of corners, ceilings, door frames, always framed slightly too low or too high, like the device didn't understand eye level. In one clip, just over 7 seconds long, you can hear bells, not close, but synchronized, like multiple sources ringing in agreement. I stopped deleting the files. Deletion doesn't work on things that want to be found. February brought reports. Online forums first, buried threads, posts that never gained traction, parents describing children who came back. Different, quieter, smaller in ways that had nothing to do with growth charts. Teachers noticing students who flinched at the sound of keys or metal tapping together. One post stood out. A security guard describing night patrol footage from a shopping center taken down after Christmas. He said the cameras showed a tall figure moving between stores after hours, never entering, never leaving, just passing through reflections. Glass, polished floors, ornaments still hanging from clearance racks. He mentioned bells. The thread was deleted within hours. In March, I found something nailed to my door. Not attached. Pinned, a scrap of leather cracked and dark, with a single bell sewn into it. The bell had been crushed inward, deliberately flattened, like someone had stepped on it with immense force. A message had been carved into the metal with something sharp. Not yours. That was the first time I felt something close to anger, not fear. Territorial recognition. I realized then what I had become. I wasn't prey anymore. I was a reference point. Krampus doesn't forget the ones who resist. He marks the boundaries where the rules failed, places where the collection broke down, people who proved that refusal was possible, but costly. We aren't safe. We are anchors. Every December since, I feel it return. Not to me, but through me, like pressure shifting along fault lines, like bells ringing somewhere far away, testing for weaknesses. And when I hear news stories about disappearances, about children who won't speak, about footprints that don't make sense, I know he's using the old paths again, just not mine. Sometimes late at night I feel watched, not from outside but from behind my eyes, as if something is checking to make sure I still remember how tall I am, making sure I don't shrink. I keep notes now, measurements, dates, records. This channel exists because of that. Liminal logs isn't a warning. It's a ledger. And if you're listening to this and December feels heavier than it should, if you've noticed bells where there shouldn't be bells, measure yourself. Stay upright. Do not present yourself, because Krampus does not forget, and next time he may not ask.